Great. Well, welcome. Yes. We are with our Julians. We have our own here in Argentina. Well, we are going to start recording this, so then we can share it with all teachers, with all other teachers. Okay. So I'm going to start with the recording.
I don't know. Sorry,
yes.
Sil. We had contacted you, Jessica and Romina and
Silvana.
I don't know if we told you about Griselda, that we were going to invite someone else who also loves your book and your work and uses this book with her own students. And this is Griselda Beacon.
She's our mentor at the Teacher Training College. So, and we know she loves your book and she reads it a lot to all her students. So we invited her.
She teaches literature.
So I am a guest. I do literature for inclusion, and obviously your book is very relevant.
Thank you.
And I am a fan of RuPaul, of course. Who is not?
Mother.
Good. So, well, first, thank you. Thank you for sharing this moment with us, accepting this interview, this talk, and sharing precious time with us. So I'm going to start with the introduction, and then we're going to ask you some questions and talk about your art. Well, we're going to present Jessica Love. She's the author and illustrator of Julian is a Mermaid, or Julian is a Mermaid, a picture book that we love and we present a lot. Yes, that because we can deal lots of topics of inclusion, diversity in our classrooms here in Argentina. We have been reading it a lot, and we would like to also say that she is a theater actor. She lives in Brooklyn, and we're going to ask her some questions. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Yes, our pleasure. Because we like Julian so much, we say Julian. Julian is a mermaid. We would like to know, or we would like to tell us about the book itself. I mean, why Julian is a mermaid? What does it mean to you? And tell us anything you want to say about this book.
Well, first of all, can you hear me all right? Is the sound okay? This room is a little bit echoey, so if there's a problem with sound, I can go into a different room, so just let me know if sound becomes a problem. So first of all, I didn't approach making this book from a teaching position. I think I approached making it as an artist, because that's really what I do, and I think the lens through which I engage with the world. So it's quite interesting that this story has become such a useful teaching tool. And I think that sort of speaks to the intersection between art and teaching. I don't know if you can set out to write the kind of story that will be useful in that way, but you can maybe do it by accident. And I think that that's what I did. But there were a couple different sources of inspiration, I suppose, or tributaries that were flowing this larger river of the story. But some of it, as you mentioned, was I was spending a lot of time watching RuPaul's Drag Race and thinking about drag as kind of the adult version of playing dress up when you're little. Because if you think about the quality of imagination when you're little and you're playing dress up, it's not frivolous. It's not,
No.
it's very real. And the way that the right costume or the right prop become sort of like an elixir that frees you completely, I really recognize that power in drag. And so I was thinking, sorry about that.
It's okay.
I'm plugged into the wall right here. So I was thinking about that, and I was also thinking about families with trans kids, gender fluid kids, gender nonconforming kids. And around the time I started thinking about this, I was dating someone whose older brother is a trans man, and he had transitioned fairly shortly before I met him and this family. And so I was introduced to this family while they were in the middle of processing this big life change that one of their family members had made. And one of the topics of conversation that came up a lot was how do we explain this to your nieces and nephews? And that just got me curious about what kind of literature there was out there for kids about gender that talked about it in a way that didn't feel, again, I realize you're all educators and I sound like I'm saying I think teaching is a bad thing, and I don't. There's a certain kind of book. There's a certain kind of book that tries.
Yes.
Yes, we know about this.
Yes, of course you do.
We can
It
tell
tries
the
so hard.
difference. Yes.
Yeah. It forgets that the deepest lessons, I think, come through real artful storytelling, because it's not coming at the thing directly and handing you the lesson, but it's taking you on a journey. And so I wanted, I don't know, I wasn't really thinking about a children's book, but then one day this image came into my head of a child sitting on the subway with his brother. It was always very clear that this encounter would take place on public transportation. I think trains and buses, and these are places where you are interfacing constantly with everybody else who lives in your city. And I liked the idea of it being this kind of unexpected encounter. Anyway, this was the idea or the image that came to me that all of these other ideas had kind of crystallized in. And in New York City, there is a Mermaid parade every summer.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the solstice parade. You know, it takes place right at the beginning of the swimming season, and people spend the whole year making these elaborate costumes. So it's like an artist parade. It's also quite queer. It's also very body positive. Everybody's naked and covered in glitter, and it's really a joyful thing. And in my reading that I had been doing on all of these blogs and message boards that families had about just sharing their experiences about having children that didn't exist in a really fixed position along the gender spectrum, there was this recurring theme of their kid really loving mermaids. And it occurred to me that that could really be the perfect sort of seed to have dropped into this character's lap, that it would take place on the day of the mermaid parade, and that's the unexpected encounter. So that, yeah, that's a little bit of where this came from and what it means to me. What else can I say?
You mentioned something that is very relevant that I can see in your book. You mentioned the question first art and play in childhood, art in general, art, how your lens to look at the world, and then play, and then dressing up as a kind of exploratory practice to more or less construct your identity, an identity that is permanently dynamic, permanently changing and never fixed. And I found in your book this peculiarity that is exactly this ambiguity that is in the book itself, because children can read Julian or Julian from so many different angles, right? It can be just a child who wants to dress up. It can be the child who is, who really wants to be a mermaid, a child who already has a certain definition in terms of being a drag. So it offers so many possibilities for the children. And for us teachers, I focus a lot on the role of the big blue fish, right? that huge blue fish, such an amazing metaphor you created with that image, right? That is, and this need of human beings in our world to be acknowledged and to be embraced and accepted and understood, and how he felt when that big blue fish gave him the necklace, the second blue fish, not the first, the second blue fish, no? That was so powerful, and it was for, I use it in both ways, for children and for teachers, right? For us to revise our own stereotypes, our own limitations, and our own cultural bias, which is really powerful in that sense.
It's really thrilling to hear you speak about the book in this way. It's so much of what I'm trying to say, I'm saying in pictures without language, and
right.
To know that the meaning is being conveyed, and that that you have such a deep and nuanced understanding is it's really exciting to me. It means that it's doing what I hoped it would do.
Well, that's nice that you feel like that. Let me tell you one little secret. I read the book, and one of my students showed the video to a friend of hers who is a trans young man in Argentina. So complicated. This man sent her a message to send to me, but this message should be to you. He was so much touched, because he said, and this is why we do literature for inclusion in the first place. He said, it is so nice to see a child like me in a children's book. And I think that goes to you, not to me. I was just, passing it through.
Well, I thank you for passing along that message. Yeah, it was for him. I made that book for him.
Yeah. And it was a long way for him to get it. So many people.
I've never been to Argentina.
Oh, you should come to Argentina. We can invite you.
I would love to.
It would be cool. We will do it. Promise. I will find a way. We will find a way.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's very, very interesting to bring this story to schools and to represent, like for us, representation matters a lot. So we try to focus on bringing stories where our students can feel identified or see themselves, which it's very, very hard. Sometimes they see the same stories and the same characters all the time and they can't find themselves. So for us, Julian is excellent in so many
I'm
ways.
so
As
happy.
Gisela said, it has so many interpretations that it opens the spectrum, so more children can feel identified and represented in the story.
I'm
And
so glad to hear you say that.
for us,
That's,
it's also a cultural thing because in my version, we have Mijo and Abuela and Julián
yep.
in Spanish. So for us to read that and mix Spanish and English in an intercultural way also opens lots of doors
Yeah.
to our students. So the question is, uh, how did you think of Julián and Abuela? If you have thought it from the beginning to represent the Latin community or African Latin community from the beginning, or it developed in a way?
It was from the beginning. When I first started drawing the character, I think I was sort of basing him physically on my partner at the time, who he's American, he's mixed race. His father was from Barbados, and his mother is a white American. So that's sort of what Julian's kind of face. I was using this man when he was little to my sort of inspiration. But for my my mom's family, which is the Loves, is my mother's last name, and my mother's side of the family. My mother grew up in Puerto Rico and Mexico City. So I was sort of thinking of this character, Julian, as my imagination child. So I was putting a little bit of my partner into him, and then I was putting a little bit of my own family into him as well, I suppose, with the Spanish language. But it was always clear to me that this character would be would be a New Yorker, but would be bilingual, and that the book would live between languages, not one or the other, but both, which is the way that so many families speak, especially in Brooklyn, where I live.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, the answer is the Spanish. The Spanish was in the book from the beginning. It was always Julián. It was always Abuela and Mijo. Yeah, it was always meant to be that way.
That's great. I could picture myself in New York because I remember when I was there, I took the subway and we ended up in Cypress Hill because I don't know what happened to that line, so we have to change lines. And we saw all this big Spanish community and the graffitis and the houses and then we went around the whole thing, like Bronx, and we went to Harlem, everything. So it's really powerful, the image of the subway and meeting the mermaids and his face, his encounter, his joy. It's amazing.
Thank you. I'm so glad you.
Do you know that there is another? I wrote another version in 2019, and in this version, there's no Mijo and there's no Abuela, and Julian has no dinghy. Do you know why?
You probably have the British version.
Yeah, it is the British version. Yes.
So the original version of Julian, the title is Julian is a Mermaid with the accent,
Yes.
and the language is Abuela and Julian. That's the version I wrote. But it was immediately released in the UK as well under, it's the same publisher, but it's the parent company. So Walker Books, who published that version that you're holding up, is the British parent company of Candlewick Press, which is the American imprint, which published the first version of the book. So when it came out in the UK, they said most of the Black population in the UK, there isn't really a big Afro-Latin community here.
No,
Many
it's
of these communities are bilingual, but they're not. Yeah, but they're not speaking Spanish.
No.
So in this version, we would prefer to have to have them seem like they're, like they're.
Yeah. No, now I understand the reason why. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand.
If you want the bilingual version, just be sure you're buying.
I will.
Candlewick Press. That's how.
Right.
Now I understand the reason why, because we were discussing this. What would that be? What I find interesting as well is the something that I like a lot, that you are in between spaces. I mean, you are, and that is absolutely in every respect. I mean, there is a whole Latino community, Latino literature in the States, and you are not member of the Latino community, but you embrace the language, you embrace the culture, you write about it, you include it in your text. Your child can belong to the Black community, can belong to the Latino community. So there's no way that we can categorize or put the child into one specific community. So all of that, you yourself, you come from drama. You do not come from the literary field. I mean, your drama is the one that, you learn to write that you are writing, and you become a success. It's absolutely amazing. It's really amazing how in between you are.
I think I will come to Argentina.
We want to tell you that when we said, Griselda, we're going to interview Jessica Love, would you like to be there? I had to do this with the phone because she was like shouting out of happiness.
I'm so happy you're here.
Yes, me too. And yes, you come from drama, so we read in an interview like you think of the scene like you need to frame. So we would like to ask you about how you frame these beautiful pictures, these illustrations that have lots of color, with these oil paintings that are magical.
I'm so glad you like them. So you want to talk about framing?
Yes. How do you think of these scenes, these images?
Yeah, I suppose it's, so if you think about framing, so I suppose I'm thinking about it both visually and dramatically. But for me, I think you're sort of thinking in terms of distilling the storytelling into a single moment, a single gesture that sort of represents, I don't know, the high note in the aria. So I suppose it's that moment of impact that I'm trying to capture. Mm-hmm. But then you're also thinking of it in terms of the way that your eye travels across the page, and is the is the important moment happening dead center in the middle of the page, or is it happening way up here in the background while all this other life is going on? Which I think is perhaps the actor in me that wants, that doesn't want what may be the most important moment in your life is everyone else has their own lives going on while it's happening. And what that also means is that in the middle of your day when nothing important is going on, someone else's heart is breaking. Everybody is the main character in their own story. And I wanted each character in this book to feel that way, because I think that's also part of how we understand that other people are real and their experiences are as real as ours, is by, in storytelling and in picture books, making sure that every single character you see has a life behind them. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Absolutely.
a lot.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. How interesting how the drama comes to play a role in your drawing, no? I mean, the way you organize the sequence of events, I mean, the organization of the story.
I think, yeah, I didn't really have any experience writing books. I'd never done it before, but I did have experience developing plays and shaping story. So I think I was bringing a slightly different form of storytelling to it, but that was sort of my training.
Yeah. And I believe that is what gave the story so much. It is a fresh story, no? It's fresh. It's very, like different.
Yeah. I wanted it to, well, I don't think I would have written it if I were just trying to write a story. This story came to me and I knew I needed to do it justice, but I think that's the way it works sometimes.
I could see, because I peeped into the, writers you read when you were little, and I could see in terms of your style, in terms of your in terms of your art, in your drawings, I can see why you like the other writers.
Yeah.
Because they have the same sort of wit and
yes,
yeah,
I think those are I learned to draw from looking at those artists' work, and there are many tributes to them within this book.
I would like to say something that I could picture your book. I mean, Julián is a Mermaid, like a play on Broadway, like theatrically. You could develop a whole musical, I think.
I would love that.
Yes, definitely. And because the visual impact that it has on us. And also, we were curious about this process of adding the words or the text. Was it something hard for you? Was it something that was suggested to you to do it? I mean, or you felt that you had to do it? Tell us about that.
That's such a good question. So I always knew I wanted the text to be very, very minimal. And I thought about this a lot. So for years, I was working on this book on my own. I didn't have an agent. I didn't have a publisher. I didn't have anything. I had this idea and I wanted to take it as far as I could on my own before I started trying to find someone to publish it. And so I thought a lot while I was working on it about whether it would work as a completely wordless book. And here's why it doesn't work. People assume Julian is a girl.
Right.
And then you don't go on the same journey. So I knew you needed a little bit of text,
Mm-hmm.
just to tell you what world we're in and what position we're starting from. But I wanted most of the text to happen in the reader's head. I wanted them to be making it up. And I love it when I read the story aloud in classrooms, I make up tons of words.
Mm-hmm.
So you have my permission to write your own dialogue.
Good.
And sometimes what I'll do is instead of adding text, I'll describe what it smells like, and that you can hear the seagulls, and that you can smell the ocean, and that
Yes.
also I think it's the drama in me.
Yes.
I'm trying to make it feel alive. So I added the text at the end, very close to the end, but it wasn't terribly complicated. It was like it had been there all along. I knew what the story was. I had drawn every page in that book probably 10 times by the time we were getting ready to go to print. So, but I added the words right at the end. And the other reason I realized you need the text is I wanted to make sure that everyone understood that this was a bilingual family, and that and if without text, people didn't know that about these characters. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you.
And we would like to know if you can tell us anything about Julian at the wedding.
Yes.
So Julian at the wedding, and just so you know, in the States, I say Julian as well. That's
Great.
they just say Julie. They just say Julian in the UK. Whenever I read the book or talk about the character, I say Julian. So Julian at the wedding takes place at a lesbian wedding in Sunset Park, which is the neighborhood I live in Brooklyn, in a little public park. And Julian is there, Abuela's there, all of her friends from her water aerobics class are there. And there's a new character named Marisol, who is the flower girl in the wedding. Do you have that tradition, the ring flower girl?
Yeah. When you have nieces and nephews, you do.
Yes, I think it was a little bit like brought to our cultures, but yes, we have it.
So Marisol is the flower girl, and Julian is the ring bearer, and they become, best friends like kids do at a wedding. But the book is sort of about, so when you're a little girl at a wedding, you have to put on the dress, and someone's doing your hair, and you're put into someone else's costume, right? Which is the costume of a pretty little girl. And sometimes that costume can be quite constraining. So I think what this book is sort of examining is the ways in which the parts we ask girls to play in society are so often the opposite of joy and play and fun and exuberance. So I think on underground level, that's what the story is about. And about how sometimes it's better to mess up the costume and get dirty and have fun than to stay stuck in the costume. When I was a little girl and I was a flower girl in many, many weddings, the very first time I ever went to New York, because I grew up in California, the first time I went to New York was because my uncle was getting married. And I was the flower girl, and the wedding was on the banks of this river. And after the wedding, I was playing with the ring bearer, trying to catch frogs, and I fell in the river, and I ruined my dress.
Oh.
And so we had to go to like a little souvenir stand, and I got one of those big I Heart New York t-shirts. And so that's what I wore for the rest of the wedding. So it's sort of inspired by that episode. Anyway, it's out on October 2nd.
Good.
Well, it is interesting because it is again something that happened to you or that you feel strongly related to. It's very interesting that you are sharing again your own stories as well.
I think they find their way in, right?
Right.
In and out.
In and out.
Are you still working as an actress at the moment?
I'm not right now. After Julian is a Mermaid came out, I decided to take a little bit of time to just do books to see how I liked it. And I like it a lot.
Great.
So right now, this is what I want to be doing. So we'll see. I might do another play, but no one can do plays right now anyway. So.
Oh yeah, that's true.
It's a good time. It's a good time to be able to work from home. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, I'm taking some time to focus on this.
You made some beautiful, beautiful drawings of Brianna Taylor and Dominic Fells that you uploaded.
Yes.
So we saw that you were working and painting, and they are beautiful. Absolutely stunning.
Thank you. It's hard to know how to use your own particular skill set to be useful in terms of amplifying the right conversations and moving them forward. And it seemed to me that the more these images are getting shared, the more widely their stories are spreading. So it seemed like something I could do.
Now, because of social media and also because of the situation we are living in, we lose track of what happens with the things we say, we do, we write, what impact it has on other people. I mean, it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
And so whenever I get a glimpse of that, I like to share, because I think it's a way of showing to the person the impact their work has. And in your case, I would like to tell you an anecdote, because I think it can be interesting for you. The way I came across Julian, because I don't know if you know Fireland, the last piece of land before you reach Antarctica. No, it's a kind of province in Argentina. It's like a triangle, and it's like separated from the it's separated from the continent by a river, and it's a small, the last part of land, and then you have Antarctica. So that's it. And there are two important cities in that place, Ushuaia and Rio Grande. I was invited to go to Rio Grande to talk about, to work with students at the teacher training college about literature for inclusion. So I brought my books and everything, and there was a girl, there was an exchange student from the US, and she came and she said, look, and she gave me Julian is a Mermaid. In Fireland, it's the end of the world, or they would say the beginning of the world. I came back to Buenos Aires, and the first thing I did, I ordered the book. It was a year and a half ago. Your book was there in the middle of Fireland.
I can't tell you how strange it is. I was all alone with this story for so long. And it's just, it's incredible to me how far it's been able to travel and the amazing people it's given me the opportunity to meet. This little character has traveled to places I will never set foot, including that tiny triangle of It Found You. What an amazing story. That's incredible.
This amazing little picture is incredible.
That was one of my ideas for the cover, but we decided to put it on the inside instead.
No, I think this is an amazing cover, and I love to open it and to have this little figure here. And you know, I don't know how many times I've read the book, and it was a student of mine who said, "Have you noticed, Griselda? Have you noticed both? Have you noticed both what Julian sees in the mirror?" And I said, "Oh no!" And I was thrilled. I was thrilled. Yeah, and I say all of these little details that tell stories that you do all over the place, over the place.
If you look at if you have the one that has the end pages, I think this is just the hardcover version.
No, we do have it.
So you see how? Do you see how they're sort of the opposite order that they are at the front? It's because at the back, it's like what you're seeing if they're all in the mirror. If they're all looking in the mirror, they're all mermaids in the mirror. But in the front.
That's fabulous! You know what I thought? I had a completely different interpretation. I understood the end paper as, after all this process of acceptance, when they go to the swimming pool, they can all feel mermaids.
That's true too. It's both, isn't it?
No, but your original idea is absolutely fantastic. Of course, it's the mirror. Oh yeah, love it.
Yes, it is how they see and how they feel. Yes, it's wonderful.
Yes.
It's wonderful.
Yes.
It's full of details and so nice. Well, to work with kids,
That
and
one.
with adults. Yes, it's beautiful.
That one. That one is. I've been reading in classical literature classes. I've been reading a lot about trans people, and what you do here is really it's a difference, because I mean, I think of the Latin trans in the 80s, like Angie Extravaganza, and you know, all the houses, and Paris is Burning, all the Vogue, and how they had to do it in places that were so you know, underground, because they had no chances, and their suffering and their deaths and everything. That RuPaul, in a way, that's why RuPaul is important as a show, as it is. RuPaul brings it to the surface, brings it to the mainstream, brings it to, you know, gives it importance from a more mainstream perspective, starting with little children. No,
Yeah.
Is something that is so necessary to be able not to have anti-extravaganzas who have to die at a very young age. Especially being Black and Latino and Puerto Rican, you know, and trans, and so that kind of this is basically what I most admire about your work, that it's that you are respecting the rights.
I mean, that film, Paris is Burning, was really changed the way that I mean, it was one of the primary sources of inspiration for this book, was especially those children in the House of Extravaganza.
Right.
They were a real source of inspiration to me. And I'll tell you one amazing little story. So after after the book came out, I got a message from somebody named Julian de la Blanca, who he's Hector Extravaganza's gay son. So Hector Extravaganza was his house father. And Julian says to me, "This is me. That was my abuela. I did this thing with the curtains. This is my life." And I got to say to him, "And your life is what inspired this work. And we're friends now." And I was just speaking to him right before I got on the phone with you, but that legacy is very much a part of why I wrote this story. Yeah.
Congratulations. Thank you for doing that for us.
Amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's incredible. Well, and all I just thought of Silvia Rimera, Marsha Johnson, representing the Latino and the Black community in Stonewall in the riot. So also they are very powerful images and people that were starting the riot movement. So it's
absolutely.
It's incredible. I think it opens lots of doors of representation.
I'm so glad you feel that way. I wanted it to feel, that's the way I described it when someone asked me what I wanted it to do, and I said I want it to feel like a door opening. So I couldn't be happier that it's a useful tool for you as an educator.
We are lucky that in Argentina there are some laws that have already been passed and that allow us to work with these stories freely in the classrooms as well, same marriage or the law for the choice.
We got gender equality law. We have gender
Right.
equality law that protects transgender kids. And we got equal marriage and comprehensive sexuality education law. And then we have another law that that says that kids are subject of rights. They're not somebody's property, so they have their own rights and they have to exercise them.
That's
so
great.
We have like this corpus of four laws that allow us, in a way also it's compulsory because it's a law. We have to deal with these topics and contents in our classrooms.
That's great. You're so far ahead of where we are in the United States. I mean, I don't even want to.
We are still fighting.
Yeah.
Though. We are still fighting. We have resistance. We find resistance.
There's a long way to go. It's not. I mean, it's difficult to change patriarchal structure and very macho culture. So it's not an easy ride. It's not an easy ride, but it's a ride we have decided to take. Well, I have taken it many years ago because I'm much older. but when I started with this, there were no laws. So everything had to be done and not really, in certain places we could not. So and now it's a much more, it's easier for us to work with these topics.
I admire what you've done. It's so important.
Well, we admire your work
Yes.
a lot, and we are very happy to bring it to our classrooms and share it with teachers all over our country to tell them that this is an amazing book. Read it to your students, bring it to your classrooms.
I'm so honored. I'm so honored to be part of the work you're doing, truly.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for your time and this beautiful talk. We can't wait to share it with our ELT community, English language teaching community, and with teachers all over our country. And we hope Latin America as well. Why not? We have social media. We have social media. And so it can get to lots of places.
Thank you so much. I hope you'll stay in touch.
Yes, of course. We are waiting for October the 2nd for Julian at the wedding.
Good.
October 2nd,
Good.
Julian at the wedding.
Thank you so much for all of your kind words. It means the world to me. It really does. So thank you. It was so nice to speak to all three of you.
Thank you. Well, we have all our anecdotes. I had a friend that started crying when I showed your book to her. And she said, this is the book for my daughter. This is the book for my daughter. It's perfect.
Oh,
Yeah, she says like, in a way like, Tonta, you made me cry. Why you did this?
oh, tears are the greatest compliment. They're salt water.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right.
So thank you. Thank you for your
Thank
story,
you.
your
Thank you
art,
so
your
much.
picture, because as an illustrator, it's incredible. Your work, it's amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, it is incredible. Your work makes our work easier, and with such quality and message, is so powerful and so much easier to do our job as teachers and educators. So, thank you a lot, and thank you for your time.
You keep doing your work, and I will keep doing mine.
Yes.
It's a
Yes,
pleasure
Yes.
to work by your side.
Yes. 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 We will keep on posting things for you to know.
Thank you so
And
much.
take us and you took us to a ride under the water. So there we are, swimming. Yeah.
Every time you look in the mirror, you'll see a
I'll
mermaid.
see.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.